Hi, I'm Luke,
And I'm TJ.
and welcome to Beyond the Building.
Give me the Bible, holy message shining. Thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 19 of Beyond the Building. As always, we are available Fridays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us in this study of God's Word. As we always like to say, we are often so invigorated and encouraged in our assemblies with the saints, whether it be our midweek Bible studies or our Sunday assemblies. Those are incredibly fun and important and encouraging times. However, we will get throughout our week and then maybe be a little bit discouraged or lack some of that motivation that we had in those assemblies. So the goal of this show is to encourage all of us to go beyond the building in our Bible studies and really have a zeal for God's Word. As is our regular routine, we have a sticker winner for this week. Feel free to comment on our episodes, and you will be entered into a sticker randomizer, and you have a chance to win one of our stickers. We have the circle logo with our logo inside it, and then the triangle outline of our logo as well. So our winner for this week is Miss Sharon Adams. So congratulations, Miss Sharon Adams. Feel free to either email us or just talk to us at church on Sunday, and you can get your sticker. Thank you so much for your support of the show. We really appreciate it. Also, feel free to join the Beyond the Building community on Facebook. This is our place where we can get to know you a little bit better, and you can get to know us a little bit better as well. We can also discuss episode topics and questions that you might have from the episodes, or things that you might want covered from the episode that were not covered in that episode. I have story time this week, and not this week, but a couple weeks ago, I forgot to mention this. Well, I guess I wasn't in the storytelling time, but I worked a fireworks stand a couple weeks ago for Memorial Day week, and basically, this was for TNT through Matt Wallen. Shout out Matt Wallen. And me and Matt Jones, who was one of our guests on this show earlier in the season, me and his family were in charge of selling fireworks to people out of like a little box, a little shack, as you would think of a fireworks stand, very very like county fair-ish. We were outside a Walmart parking lot. It was a fun time. We made an advertisement. So if you're on Instagram
So,
or Facebook for that matter, feel free to check that out. We put a lot
if
of
you
effort in
have
it.
not seen this ad, I implore you, please go watch it. It is hilarious. It's great entertainment just by itself, and then also kind of informative if you want to, buy fireworks.
Yeah, seriously. Um, so yeah, that was fun. It was very tiring, long hours, but it was a very good experience. We had a lot of fun. Um, Nothing really crazy happened. We got rained on a couple times, not rained out. We well, I guess we did get rained out maybe one night, but we had a little issues with the generator. That was a fun time. We had been running that generator pretty much nonstop every single day, um, and it was the last day, and it eventually just pooped out, and we were gonna be at our peak sales moment, which usually comes around 5 or 6 o'clock, maybe a little bit later than that. Usually, like sometimes around 9 or 10 and beyond, um, people will just start randomly buying fireworks, because I feel like it's one of those late night things where you're like, let's late at night. Let's go buy some fireworks. Like just the weird side quest people. Um, so me and Matt's family, we left, and Matt stayed back and sold fireworks at like 11 o'clock at night, and I think his number was like $500 in sales for that.
Wow.
And that was like, I think, close to our total for that day. We did not do a lot of sales on
Wow.
Memorial Day. Um, so it was a number. It was either like very close to our total, or like 2/3, or something crazy. Like, wow, can't believe you got that. So props to him for doing that. But yeah, so that was probably the craziest thing that happened, was the generator stopped working. We couldn't fix it. But anyways, that being said, today's topic is going to be how we can handle personal conflict as a Christian. So we need to first define what is conflict. There are different types of conflict, and not all conflict. I'll preface it with saying that not all conflict is bad, right? There are necessary conflicts that must be had in order to have progress. Um, Take for instance a married couple, or even boyfriend girlfriend, right? I'll say boyfriend girlfriend for an example here. Um, as the couple is getting to know each other and working towards marriage, there is going to be necessary conflict. I would say it's probably near impossible. Luke is more of a statistics guy than I am, but it is probably near impossible that they just have everything in common and they never get into conflict at all, right?
I,
Um,
I've I've never met two people that agree on everything.
Correct.
Uh, and when it seems like that it's true, usually what that means is one person disagrees, but is just not voicing it, which
Yeah,
is unhealthy.
yeah,
Um, it's unhealthy for a number of reasons, and so you're absolutely right. Some conflict is necessary.
yeah. I mean, if you are getting to know someone, then you are going to disagree and you are going to have conflict. But it's how we handle that conflict that makes the conflict bad or not. A conflict can be bad if we lash out, if we yell, if we whatever. A conflict can be healthy if you discuss and have conversation. And maybe you don't come to a conclusion, but at least you had it and you solved some sort of issue or got something out in the air or whatever. Um, so that being said, not all conflict is bad, but let's talk about the couple kinds of conflict that we can have. So um, the first one is going to be public sin, and this would be something that affects the church as a whole. Either you have put a bad image on the church, or this is something more in the legal realm. Can you elaborate more on public sin?
Yeah, so uh, we're while we're kind of talking about how to handle specific kinds of conflict, right? There's there's certain situations that just make things more hairy. There's things that we have to take into account that are specific and change how we handle that conflict. And public sin and the conflict that comes from that is maybe handled in a bit of a different way. I would say it probably handles it, or it goes along the same pattern, but it's handled in a way that is probably less concerned about the individuals involved and more concerned about the collateral damage. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, and
definitely.
obviously it is concerned with the individuals affected, but it has a lot more consequence than just those individuals. And so that's kind of a thing to is necessary to keep in mind, I guess, when handling that type of conflict. And we're not. I mean, should I go ahead and spoil it? Uh,
Beats
we're
me.
specifically talking about like personal conflict in this,
Correct.
and so right, church discipline and how that's handled and how that differs from personal conflict is a subject for kind of a different day, because it is more, I think, nuanced because you do have just other people that are affected. And like TJ said, the impressions of that it forms about the church, or if there was some sort of legal trouble involved, if it was, uh, you know, God forbid, a murder or something like that, right? Obviously, okay, that has other consequences rather than what we're going to be talking about today. So it's just kind of a different a different scenario that is handled a tiny bit differently.
Yeah, most definitely. The other type of sin that we would be remiss to what how do you grammatically say that? I've said that a couple times on the show. I would be remiss to not say it. Is that how you say
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, well, somebody check us. Somebody check us here. So I would let's just say it. I would regret not saying that
There you go.
secular conflict is a type of conflict. And could you elaborate more on that for us as well? So this would be, I guess, right, conflict with people outside the church.
Well, I think when we were specifically forming this, we were talking more of like conflict that exists that exists between a Christian and non-Christian kind of, but more so just like conflict that happens in my mind at like a larger scale. Like war is conflict. Uh and what we're going to be talking about today is nigh impossible to do in a war situation. And also I would say this includes things like, you know, if someone breaks into your home and has your family at gunpoint, right? That's conflict, sure, but it's also a lot more than that. Things like that. Um, and even like, I don't know, competing for jobs and stuff. Like it's kind of that's conflict, but it's not sin.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean? It's
yeah.
not
You're
it's
not wronging someone else, right? By
Yeah,
existing in the competitive industry that we live in, right?
yeah. And that's conflict, and our Christianity should inform how we handle that.
Most
And like
definitely.
I said, we're talking specifically in this episode about personal sin. So how we handle kind of secular conflict is a also a different topic. But it's not yeah, it's different. Uh because it's not really necessary to follow the steps that we're going to talk about. First of all, because it may not involve any wrongdoing, or it also may just, if you tried, you would die,
Yeah.
or something like that. Like there's again like another wrench is thrown in the mix that makes what we're going to be talking about today um, difficult to apply. So we could probably talk about that in a different episode. I would enjoy that, but
Yeah.
that's not what we're talking about today.
Yes, definitely. So what we are talking about today is personal sin, and this would be sin that is specifically between you and someone else. Johnny stole my cookie. What do we do about it, right? This is the type of sin that we are talking about, and the main passage for this study is going to be Matthew 18:15 through 19. So please turn your Bibles there, and we will kind of start our scriptural part of our study here, and get into some principles that we can apply to our lives. So let's just read it real quick. Matthew 18:15 through 19. Moreover, if your brother sins against you, this is Jesus speaking, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained a brother. But if he will not hear, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of two or three witnesses every word may be established. And if he refuses to hear them, tell it to the church. But if he refuses even to hear the church, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector. Assuredly, I say to you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, I say to you that if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. So basically, first half of this section is conflict resolution, and the other half, I guess, really kind of backs up the authority of Jesus speaking to the apostles specifically, and what that means.
Definitely. And there's a definite pattern here, which we'll probably just lay out, and while we reference it, so we don't have to go to the individual passages each time. But it's first go to them yourself. If that doesn't work, go to them with someone else. If that doesn't work, go to the elders. Um, yeah, and that is the general pattern. And if that doesn't work, okay, well then you've done all you can do, right? The person who is offended is to be treated like a heathen and a tax collector, is what it says in verse 17.
Yeah, definitely, and that is where it does get into church discipline, kind of, right? Um, in matters of
The two things are very closely linked.
very, very closely, yes. Because if okay, I have confronted someone about a certain thing that they did, they absolutely refuse. So I take with me one or two witnesses. They still absolutely refuse. Well, one, we've already entered into a realm of my brother is in sin and we are called to bear one another's burdens, right?
Mhm.
So this matter must be told to the church either way because this is a spiritual concern and the elders should definitely be a part of this because there are shepherds, right? At that point, it is no longer between you and the other person. This is about the other person's soul. And this is something that the elders, in my opinion, not in every circumstance, but in my opinion, I think the elders should have involvement in this if they are good shepherds. Um, just something to
Well,
think about.
yeah, and while it's closely related to church discipline, there's a similar passage in Corinthians, I believe, or yeah, Corinthians, I believe. Um, but this passage in particular, I don't think you can say. Well, first of all, it's written to Jews. It's not written to Christians. This is before the church has been established, right?
Correct.
And every passage in Scripture has to be able to be understood in at least one context
Yeah.
to to them as they received it. Uh, and so, generally speaking, right, this is principle to apply um, to our scenario. It's it's and again, right, this intersects closely with church discipline, and there are other passages for that, which is why we're probably going to talk about that later. Um, but it just it's a principle, I think, more than anything, um, about how we are to go about and live peacefully.
Yeah, and I mean these are even even if you were to strip the Bible of this passage, we would still be able to figure out how to handle conflict through other passages in our scriptures, right? And we would be able to look at these same guidelines and figure that out because it is God's will, and this is how He would have us to handle conflict. As we always like to point out on this show, like if we are Christians, if we want to serve God first and foremost, we need to look for His directives. We must seek Him diligently. I mean, he who seeks will find, right? So His will is laid out there for us. We just got to look for it and find it. Do not labor for the food that perishes, but to the food that endures to everlasting life. So as long as we are working and laboring and studying and presenting ourselves workers who do not need to be ashamed, then God God will be there. God is faithful. I don't know, just a little tangent that I kind of thought about. Um, so, like we said, the first step is just confront the person directly. If someone has sinned against you, um, and we kind of got into this conversation while we were discussing this episode, what exactly is sinning against someone? In my opinion, I think it is more of someone has done something unbiblical towards me, right? That's personally what my mind goes to when I hear the word someone sins against me, right? So this would be someone cursed me out or something, right? A brother cursed me out because he was mad at me, right? That is quite obviously something very unbiblical. However, I think if two people had a disagreement about, I don't know, something that offended the other person unintentionally, I don't think that's necessarily the same thing as if someone were to curse you out, like sin wise, right? I think it's less about, oh, someone quote unquote did me wrong and I feel bad about it, rather than someone actually did something wrong and sinful to me, and this is how I feel, and now we need to address it. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Um, this is kind of where I think it's difficult to draw hard lines, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Um, if
Hey,
someone
that's the
sins,
that's the mantra of
yeah,
BTB.
for
Difficult to
sure,
draw hard lines.
for sure. Uh, but right, if someone sins, for instance, if someone steals something from me, you could say in one aspect they've sinned against me,
Sure,
but more than anything, they've sinned against God.
sure,
Um, Generally speaking, I think I tend to take it a bit more broad. Um, and my reasoning for that is I think it would have been really simple. Well, my general interpretive principle is whenever something simpler could have been said, why wasn't it? It's suspicious that it wasn't more simple. It's specifically not when a brother sins. It's when a brother sins against you. Um, and so I think that maybe one of the reasons why it's kind of difficult to define is because it's meant to be a little open to interpretation. It's meant to be interpreted personally. That again, that's my personal interpretation of it. Uh, but that's just kind of generally how I've viewed it. Um, and either way, right? If you do take it a bit more broad or not, I think it's if you take it more broad, I don't think it creates more problems. I think it solves more problems. And I'll kind of explain that. If someone commits sin, textbook sin, right? If someone steals something from me, they've sinned against God, they've sinned against me. Um,
sure. Well,
and
it's like David when he said, "Against you only have I
yes,
sinned." Right?
well, yeah, it's like, okay, what about Uriah?
Yeah,
He's
right.
dead.
Your eyes
Yeah,
just sitting over here like, "Come on, bro."
yeah. I imagine him in heaven, like, dude, you, I'm dead now, and you are with my wife. I'm
Right.
sure that was kind of offensive, but anyway, um, uh, it obviously applies then. I see, right, but if I go through this process, if I try to make it right between them and me and them and God, uh, then I've done well. But if they've just offended me, right? If they said something that I maybe even if it's my fault and I took it the wrong way, if I go to them and I tell them, hey, if and I say in love, hey, this offended me. I just wanted to let you know, and it because of what you said, it made me feel this way towards you and whatever, right?
Yeah. Either way,
That
whether it is more broad or less broad, the principle is still a
yeah,
helpful one. There is
right, and
absolutely no harm with following this.
right, and that's what I was getting at with. I think it solves more problems
Yeah,
if you
for
do
sure.
if you do interpret it more broadly, because right, sometimes especially in the South, we often just hold things and hold grudges, and then they turn into bad stuff, and we shouldn't do that. So I think it solves more problems. So that's another reason why I kind of personally interpret it more broadly. Uh, and yeah, so that's just generally how I've interpreted it. One thing to note about this point, right? Go to your brother. Um, the the we talked about this a little bit about how to forgive someone, uh, in I believe season one, but the the direction is to the person who was offended. It was to the person who was sinned against. It is our duty, if we feel like we've been sinned against, to go to the other person, right? Not to expect them to come to us. So
Yeah.
I always think that that's important that we sometimes gloss over, right? It is our duty to go and try to fix problems.
Yeah, our hearts should have the disposition of I want to seek resolution,
Yes,
right? It should not we shouldn't want to let things go by the wayside necessarily, right? So I think that's a
absolutely.
very good point. Thanks for adding that. So obviously the next step, if your brother does not hear you on this matter, then you must take a witness, one or two, right? Um, and the question that needs to be asked is the witness a witness to the event or just of the confrontation? And that's the question that I'd like to discuss briefly. Can you start us kind of off on that train of thought?
Yeah, so it says, right, bring a witness so that every word may be established, I believe is what it says. Uh,
Yes.
and he's quoting the Old Testament. And the practice, the law was you need at least two witnesses to corroborate an event to convict someone, basically, of breaking the law. And so, in my mind, it's a clear callback to that. Now, that being said, it's a little hairy. Um,
Well, and it's difficult because there, and we'll kind of go through the logical breakdown. So I'm going to sneak peek that. But if if the witness is just a witness to the confrontation, then I feel like that may cause a little bit of bias to some degree, depending on what the confrontation is. If the confrontation is, well, my brother treated me poorly, then well, yeah, then the witness would not have bias because they just witnessed the event. But if it's a completely different event and the witness just saw you two talking about it, then that's a bit different, right?
well, this is the thing, right? Which I don't think it's not explicitly said here, but this confrontation is not it's not a trial. It's not I'm trying to prove you did this.
Yeah.
It's it's I'm trying to solve a problem. And the other person and this spoiler alert, I don't think it I mean it could be, but I don't think it is a witness to the event. I think it's a witness to the confrontation itself. And I'll get into that. But I think the purpose of the witness is to verify that both people have the right heart. Um,
Yeah.
more than anything, right? Because it's like if both people are trying to solve the problem, if one person is saying, "Hey, you sinned against me," and the other person is saying, "I don't think I did," right? I don't think I did that. Well, the witness to the event isn't really biased, right? Like, you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because it's not supposed to be, yeah, I you did this, I saw you do it. That it's supposed to be like hashing out. Okay, is this person right to be personally offended or whatever, what have you?
Yeah.
And the yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, and I think even if it is a witness to the actual event itself, that still would help the issue, right? Because if that brother is caught in sin, then the one or two witnesses at least would be able to help that brother and say, "Hey, we noticed this. Like, what's the deal? Like, is everything okay?" Right? So I think there's
right.
definitely merit to both sides of that. Um, so something to think about when you're engaging in that for sure.
Yeah. I
Um,
sorry.
no, yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say the one reason that I don't think it has to be a witness to the event. I think it's just a witness to the confrontation. Is because the you in verse 15 is singular, right?
Interesting.
And the commands are singular, right? So it's if a brother sins against you, not just if a brother sins against and so kind of the logical problem you run into is if it's a witness to the event and not the confrontation, what do you do if there's no other witnesses?
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
like in that case it would be a public event rather than a more private event.
Yeah. So this
Okay,
like
yeah, that makes
if
sense
it
to me.
yeah. So and but I think a bit of wisdom is needed to know
Mm-hmm.
if it's which would be better, if a witness to the event if it's available, or just a witness to the confrontation. Because like I know some people that if more than one person showed up accusing someone of something, then no progress would be made whatsoever. um
That's our other tagline for Beyond the Building. Wisdom needed. Although I'm not
yes.
sure. Does that sound arrogant or does it sound like we are stupid? I'm not. I don't know.
It
It's
depends
like,
on the conversation, maybe.
yeah, right. Um, so the final step in solving confrontation, right, is taking it to the church. So this would be taking it to the elders. I think another thing would be addressing it to the congregation as a whole. But because we have elders in their, I don't know, shepherdess positions. I don't even know if that's a good adjective to describe that. Shepherdess, whatever.
It makes sense.
Um, Elders who act in a shepherd-like manner. Being that we have God instituted positions that are supposed to deal with these types of things, bring it to the elders, and the elders can address it with the congregation. Um, Now, if there are no elders at this congregation, one, the congregation needs to not let that slide, right, and get lax, because the whole like purpose for Titus being where he was to set in order things that were lacking. So that's a whole nother conversation, right? But the goal of the church is to actively seek out men who can be elders. And if a church does not have elders, do your best to train men to become elders. Um, I
And
mean, that's the most expedient way that we can deal with those things.
definitely. And like we talked about, right? This was written before the church is established.
Correct.
These are in many ways, right? It's a little different because it's the words of Jesus. Um, but in a lot of ways, it's kind of like the Old Testament. It's for our learning. They're things. This is how God views a proper way to handle conflict, right?
Yeah.
And so if there aren't actual elders, the elders he's referencing are not shepherds that we think
Correct.
about, right? They are um, the well respected men in around, right? Uh, and so even if you don't have elders, you can still apply this.
Yeah, definitely. Um, So now I kind of want to recap all that and just do a logical breakdown of this verse, because one might be saying, "Oh, well, okay, this is great, but why in the world does this matter?" Right? I think one, God says it, so it matters. But if you want further explanation, I think we can look logically and more secularly, and we can see that this is a logical process, right? Okay, if someone sins against me, first and foremost, let's go right to them, because okay, if we go to other people, well, that's seed for gossip, and then word gets around to this individual, and then even more, you could lose that brother even more, especially if that brother is in the wrong. Now you're causing them to possibly lose their faith, and there's so much risk involved with that.
When
um,
you don't go to them, you just cause more problems.
yeah. um, and then taking witnesses, right? We've kind of discussed that already, the benefits of that, being able to be an objective observer when we take those one or two witnesses. Um, Taking it to the elders or the church. After that, now we have authority. We have authority figures who are um, willing to help and willing to set things more in motion. And then we didn't discuss this, but I mean the last verse that we had talked about in that conflict section. Um, and if he refuses even to hear the church, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector. So at that point, you must distance yourself from him. And this is tying into church discipline of, if someone is stuck in sin and they're absolutely unwilling to repent, things have been brought up, the elders have been in talks with this person, we are to disfellowship that person because it serves as an example. The whole reason we're doing that is because we want them to come back. That is the goal of church discipline, is to have people come back. And I would say this is the goal of personal quote unquote discipline as well, right? Personal conflict management. We want to restore our relationship with that person. The goal of, treating someone like a quote unquote heathen or a tax collector isn't to be like, okay, bump you now to the street. No, it's to try and restore that relationship as best as we possibly can. So there is logic, and wow, what a coincidence, because God is the God of logic and the God of not confusion, but of order. Um, it completely makes sense that this process makes sense to us and has a lot of great benefit. So, any additional thoughts on that?
Um, I just want to say, right, because we didn't talk about this explicitly about like the last part, and maybe this goes a little bit more into church discipline, the conversation. So if so, I'm sorry for spoiling a future episode.
How dare
Um,
you?
I know it's awful, but it says treat them like a heathen and a tax collector. Um, I've heard the argument said that like, okay, well, if the church disfellowships someone, that doesn't mean I have to personally disfellowship them. I can still, do like basically act like everything's okay. First of all, that kind of undermines the purpose of it, very obviously. But he's talking to Jews. Why were the Pharisees so shocked that Jesus was eating with a tax collector? It's because they wouldn't eat with them. It was seen as an awful thing to do. uh, Acts 10, verse, I believe, yeah, 28. This is Peter talking to Cornelius. Then he said to them, you know how unlawful it is for a Jewish man to keep company with or go to one of another nation. And then he talks about how God has done away with that, right? A heathen to the Jews that are hearing Jesus' words here was someone you did not associate with. And it's to snatch them out of the fire, right? There are plenty of passages, and if we talk about church discipline, we'll talk about the purpose behind it, right? It's to save their soul. People are not going to be responsive to this if we if we don't treat it like it has any purpose or any power. It's supposed to change how we interact with people for their sake, not for out of spite or meanness, but out of love because we care about them.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what we need to do, right? And this goes along with our episode on forgiveness, which feel free to check that out, please. But we need to have an overall attitude of forgiveness. So ultimately, we need to use good judgment on when and where to apply these scriptures correctly. Rightly divide the word of truth. We must apply the specific scriptures in their specific context and where they're applicable to us today. And God has also given us the parameters on how to handle personal conflict. Let's follow that. Like, follow the principles and the divine guidance that He has given us in order to better handle conflict. So thank you all for checking out this episode of Beyond the Building. Next week, Lord willing, will be our last episode for the season. Wow, wow, wow. What a journey it has been. So, yeah, we're capping it at 20 episodes, if possible. So, been a great season. Lots of fantastic conversations. So, once again, Lord willing, look forward to doing that and studying God's Word with you all. We love communicating with you and contacting with you. So if you have any questions, comments, episode ideas, please feel free to email us at beyondthebuilding51314@gmail.com. And you can also find us at Beyond the Building Official on Instagram. And with that, we'll see everyone in the next episode of Beyond the Building.
Holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day.